when the church can, it will take over and it will give me back my $1,000. And then but I won't gain anything from it because I want it in my karma. You pay me back some other way instead of let's keep track of exactly how much you owe me. So, and believe me, that always has worked very well for me. I got much more than if I had nickel and dimed the good Lord for every penny. So what happened was I rented this to a darling couple who had 3 cute kids, and then I rented this to a couple who were just newly married, and they came to me after spending their first night in there and moving in and getting in, and they said, we don't have a shower. I said, oh. They said, can we have permission to put one outside and we'll build a little wall? It'll be cold in the winter, but the rent was so reasonable for them, and they were making the payment for us. And I realized I had to do this because if I didn't, the future of the church's expansion would be challenged. In the process of figuring all this out, this was the doctor's office behind us. This was a little lot behind the fellowship hall. And then I found out there was this strip that was an easement, and it was made to be a road to go to all of this property that went down the block away. And this was an easement, a road. And so the only thing I could do, since this was so reasonable in time, I went to the owners of this property and said, would this be ever for sale, just if we could just inch that much farther? And they said, oh no, that's an easement so that if this property is ever sold, they can have a driveway to get in and out to delivery things and stuff like that. In the meantime, the Home of the Guiding Hands was here, and I visited them frequently and asked them if they ever decided to sell their property, would they please contact us, that we would be very interested. Little did they know we had no means to back up this dream, but yeah, I wanted it to be available. And so one day a man came over from this property and he said, hi, I'm your new neighbor. I just bought this Home of the Guiding Hands property and we're going to have it for our church. Their church is now over in Santee, where the Smith's Market used to be. And so I was just so unhappy with those people, the former tenants. And then I was unhappy that he bought it and he didn't know we wanted it, and we wasn't any way we could have it anyway, but I was just unhappy. And so then, that was 1974 that these lots were purchased. And then in about 1976, this property became available. And it was just dirt. There wasn't anything there to generate any income. But we had to have it, and if we didn't have it, the future of our expansion would be challenged. So we bought it, and the payments were $368 a month. And I think there was $1,000 down, and the church had that money. So we bought this property, and I said, God, it's me again. If you could just please, what are we going to do? We need to have this property. We need to expand it. And I'm holding this vision for the future, and I've got the people that'll do whatever we need, but just would you give me some help on this? And so the next day, some people in hard hats came in, and they said, we're from the city of El Cajon, and we're building a cement riverbed that is going through the city. You're familiar with it. It goes through. And he said, we have all this heavy equipment, and we would like to have a place to park it that's near the construction zone. It's big tractors and trucks and dump trucks and stuff. And we would like to rent your property here from you. And we only have, our budget is for $363 a month. I said, God? So they paid the mortgage, and thank goodness the construction went on and on for years. Well, and we paid that property off. Then I decided to see what we could do about this property, and I purchased it from a man whose name was Statler. And Mr. Statler had a home in El Cajon, and he was very helpful to us and generous in accepting just like $5,000 for this little piece of property. And what happened there was Mr. Statler had a business partner whose name was Hilton, and they had some hotels, Statler Hilton hotels. And he donated the land where Granite Hills High School is now, because that was his personal landing strip for his private airplane. And his house still stands. It's across the street, a real cute little house that has a bedroom, living room in the house, and then a separate structure that's a kitchen, and then another structure that's a guest house. And it's just very quaint and cute. And so then we purchased this property. So the next thing we knew, we had this and all of this. And then one day in about 1984, two men came. They had on white shirts and neckties. I thought they were Jehovah's Witnesses. And they said, we represent Pacific Springs, a retirement community, and we have purchased all of this property, and we were wondering if you would like to sell all of this property. And I said, well, no, because this is for our future, and because of the circumstances, I was frightened and I was unhappy, and I had to just put those feelings aside and then think and thank. And so what I said was, well, I'll tell you what let's do. Let's take all of this property that you want and take this and this pain of my existence, that little strip that could never go away. Let's take all of that and then draw a line here, and then you take this and this little pain here, and then you will have a Utah-shaped property instead of an Oklahoma-shaped property. And then you can put more on it because of the edges you're supposed to have and all that. And they said, would you do that? I said, yes, we would do that. And then they said, and I said, and then you could take this little strip and then just move it out of the way so that we would have a property that would look like this. And they said, would you do that? And I said, yep, we would. And I said, oh, and another thing, you can give us this building, which is full of meeting space and classrooms. And you can figure out its square footage value and then make that a donation to our nonprofit organization and have a write-off to sweeten the deal. And he said, would you do that? I said, yes, we would. So they drew up the paperwork, and in a few days, with the stroke of a pen, instead of having property that was shaped like upside down Oklahoma, we had property that we now have, and we had a completely constructed, bathroomed, fellowship halled, classrooms, sound structure up here with the stroke of a pen. We didn't have to build it. We didn't have to get the permits. We didn't have to get a design team or anything like that. We didn't have it 1 minute, and we had it the next. And we had it because everyone had done all the work to do the property and have the vision and see what and know what could be done. So all of a sudden, this was the shape of our spiritual home. And then we started plans on our sanctuary, and we took the little side off of the chapel so that it would be the shape that it is now. We demolished the assembly building, and then we put the sanctuary and the quiet garden there. So then these buildings went away so that all of that area could become parking. And then we laid the foundation, and our original plans were to build, lay the foundation, then put up the walls, then put on the roof, and then fill everything in. But the city said that we couldn't build it in stages like that it wasn't safe, and it was against the city regulations. So then we started, we put in the foundation, and one of the things that we did on this foundation before the building was here, we had a party that I imagined, and where everyone brought their Walkman, and then everyone was plugged into their own music, and then they were dancing. So you had waltzers and two-steppers and jive and jitterbuggers, everybody just going crazy, but they were dancing to their own tune. And that was just one of the fun things that we did. So then after putting down the foundation, then we had construction, and then because of the construction ordeal and the expense, we had to get financing, and banks don't loan churches money because they have a history of the whole thing not working out well. So we went to a church financial company, and we started off real good, but they started increasing our interest, and so we finished the construction, but in the process we had the Tiffany window that's on the cover of this morning's bulletin, and we put it here right where it is now in a architecturally designed wall that was windproof with bulletproof glass on the front and the back, and then that was our stained glass billboard for God. And people could visualize as they came to the chapel and in the overflow in the Friendship Hall, they could visualize where the church was going to be. So we put in the windows, and then we built the building. It was a little reverse but unique. And then in 1988, I think we had our opening day, and then we had problems that we all had to overcome because we had the financial part of this church financial group, and they were increasing the interest, and they were demanding the payment, and we were struggling to make the payment. And at one time, because the payment needed to come and be made on a monthly basis and right on time and everything, that's when we had our mortgage group, and this was a wonderful group of individuals that came and gave an extra amount each month, and that helped, and then with the offerings on Sunday, that helped us make that high mortgage payment. And during the time of that, there wasn't enough money to pay my salary. So, and instead of taking a salary and losing the momentum that we had on building the building, I went without a salary for a year. And Virginia took care of me that year. Virginia is my wife. She said to say hi this morning. She had a patient to see early this morning. We were having a big birthday party for our cousin Terry from Hemet at noon. And so she's home making the party happen, and she had to work this morning. So she took wonderful care of me and all my expenses. And then at the end of a year, a lovely individual from our church who came to church was a happy person. We liked her very much. She was a good contributor. She passed away, and her attorney got in touch with us and said that she had left our church. She played the stock market, and no one knew that, but that's why she got up so early every morning. And she had left our church not only enough money to, in one fell swoop, pay my salary for a year, but also to take care of all the other things that were in neglect because we had to put them on a back burner in order to make our mortgage payment. And then by then it was less strain to work the mortgage payment. So all of a sudden, what I had been doing without and suffering a little because of was just all wiped away. And I was able to re-embrace. That's when you hug somebody and say thank you. But I also reimbursed Virginia for helping me so much during that time, and then that took pressure off the whole congregation too, because that was suffering a little. So, and I said, because I had extra left over, I said, Virginia, could I do something sweet for you, and to say thank you and to celebrate? And she said, I love the diamond that you got me for when we got married, but she said I would like a little bigger one. And I said, well, what would you do with that one? She said, well, we'd use it to trade in and trade up for the bigger one. You'd put some money with it and I'd get a bigger one. And I said, well, doesn't that have sentimental value? And she said, not as much as a bigger one would. And so then, and what had happened was, I hope I can say this, our core of givers, doers, believers was just as strong and sweet as it could be. We had a lot of people during the foundation here and the window and all the parties and fun that we had and the momentum and everything, and they didn't quite leap in. So that when it was time to show up with more volunteering, more giving, more worship, more praise, more giving, they didn't want to participate because they weren't really in. And so that's why we had the financial challenges, and why in the first place we took out the loans, because everyone said they would. And we didn't take pledges or anything. They just said, oh, we'll do it. But then they didn't. So the ones that were left really did pull their weight. And a man who was a multimillionaire saw the situation and said, how much are you paying interest? We said 18%. He said the going rate is 6%. I'll take over the debt and you make the payments to me with the 6% interest. And then when I die, I will give the mortgage to the church. And that gentleman happened to be Virginia's father, Cleo Stater, and he and his twin brother, Leo, their first venture was a supermarket. And the Staters then did wonderful things for their community, but also they did wonderful things for our church. And then when he passed away in 2001, Virginia and I had the privilege of announcing here in this very spot that the mortgage had been paid, and that all of this property is mortgage free. So that was just another miraculous thing. But what happened was, Mr. Stater, who was my father-in-law, came to church, and only a few times. And one of the times he came, it was my birthday. And Gary and a bunch of the music, they had figured out some country western hee-haw stuff that was funny and cute, but it was my birthday. And also, a group of motorcycle enthusiasts who love to get dressed up like a gang, who have normal jobs and haircuts during the week, but they go to a church on a Sunday morning, a certain Sunday of every month, and then they all go have breakfast someplace with their huge, big, roaring motorcycles. And they came that Sunday, and they all sat right there. And my father-in-law sat right there next to his daughter and my mother-in-law. And then we did church. And when it was over, he said, I didn't feel like I'd been to church. I felt like I'd been to a party, And so they were just amazed to be in the same room with Hell's Angels. I mean, it's like... And so, but what he did, as we talked about this, he said, you can feel something in that place. And those people, they love that place. They believe in what they're doing and building. And he said, I want to help. So that was part of the magic of everyone at that time doing whatever they could. So then, now that gives us a history of this property. Then some other things I wanted to just mention was this is the most important part. The people that came to a very humble little stucco building that then went through a lot of changes, and then the property expanded, and then they caught a vision. I designed this building, but Ferris, the architect who did the outside of the chapel, he drew the plans like I had imagined them to be. And when we showed these plans to everybody, they got the vision. They could see it, and they could stand on and dance on the foundation, and they just knew it would happen. And because their thoughts and their devotion to principle was so strong, they made it appear. They made a building appear, because we needed to have the hall and the classrooms. And so as a result of that, there were, and I wrote these things down because I didn't want to miss anything, there were worship services and Sunday school and midweek classes in the daytime and in the evening. There were potlucks, hoedowns, the Mother Goose Parade. We made floats for the Mother Goose Parade. We had the world's first recyclable float in the world, and we had the world's first non-motorized. We built a frame out of piping, that plastic piping, and loaded it with hot air balloons, helium, and then we carried it. And we were going to make a float out of cupcakes, and then at the end of the parade we were going to eat it, but that didn't work out. We had bake sales, car washes, rummage sales, Mother's Day, Father's Day, the Women of Unity, the Men of Unity, dinners, luau's, fiestas, raffles, music festivals, prosperity banks, Christmas, Thanksgiving, candlelighting services, Easter, Good Friday services, 4th of July, pet parades, exchange students that came from all over the world that used our buildings, talent shows, and Sunday school pageants. We also had around 4,392 Sunday services in all of our buildings, about 2,392 Sunday school hours, 2,392 prayer ministry hours on Tuesday morning, about 4,000 classes during this 46-year period, 46-year period, and then about 180 events, 4 or 5 a year, and 4,000 weddings, which would mean that about 40,000 people came in that didn't come to church, but they were here on a Saturday and found out where we were, and about 2,000 funerals and memorial services, and a number of christenings. So I just don't want to miss. Okay, so then, what made this happen? People dreaming and believing and holding a vision. Dreaming and believing and holding a vision for a project that they devoted their time and energy to on a Sunday morning, but also transferring the dreaming, the believing, and the holding a vision for their own lives and their own families and their own careers. They enjoyed the process, and it was a process. Seemed like it took forever sometimes. And they enjoyed raising the funds, which also raised spirits and created results. They tithed, and they created stories, and they created history, and they created personal results. And I think that because of this, not only here on this corner did they do this, but for themselves, they made a difference in their lives and in our community. We reached out to Alcoholics Anonymous, and we had meeting places for all kinds of groups and boards, and we did blood drives and helped other churches get started and helped a number of Unity ministers get started. And we had distributed food and were helpful with the homeless. And in looking at who to thank, we want to thank the prayer group, because it was that group in El Cajon that had this vision, oh, this is going to happen someday. And that first congregation and all the congregations that followed, and the donor of our Tiffany window, and the stock market donor, and those who served and gave and dreamed and carried the dream forward. And the chandelier donor, and who also gave us a beautiful gazebo that termites took away from us. And then also the person that donated their house that, well, completed the payment of these 2 lots and just made all that happen. So what I would leave you with is we want to honor their spirit and thank God for them. One time I heard someone say that heaven must be what looks like what the people that are there, what their vision would be. And I would just like to think of all those people that gave so much and did so much and sacrificed and learned and grew and expanded and moved on into more life at some tea dance about now with Glenn Miller and Patty Page singing as their soloist for the afternoon. Guy Lombardo was yesterday, and having a wonderful time. And what put them there and on their way is the karma that they created for themselves by doing what they did. And this was just the Sunday part of their life, but all the rest of the times of their life made such a big difference for the fabric of our nation and our community and their families and each of them. Now, the ball is in our court to be thankful for what we have, to be thankful that this is just a building, but the people that come into it, bringing their consciousness and their gifts, make it a very special place. It is special right this minute because you're here. And as we take the lessons and implement them in our lives to work and grow and expand, then we make a difference in the lives that our life touches. And then as we do our volunteering, cleaning, baking, dancing, having fun, showing up, tithing, praying, affirming the truth that sets us free, then this is our gift. And just as I know those that came before us were blessed immeasurably, if you'll do your part, and you have a wonderful leader in Reverend Brian to lead you forward, if you'll do your part, this story will be outdated and outshadowed by your story. I've really enjoyed this long time, but I needed you to know about the history and the people that made it possible. They knew you were coming, and you came. And now you're making it possible for those that you know are coming to make this a spiritual place like none other in our community. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.